Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to welcome you all to this leadership spotlight session on ways to wealth. Before we begin, let me just briefly introduce an eminent panel that we have for today's discussion. First, on my left is Mr. Ashish Bhandari. He is the MD and CEO of Thermax Group, a group probably all of you know as a leader in providing energy and environmental technology solutions. Next, we have Mr. Guillaume Dordain. He is the CEO of Veolia India, a global company that is focused on providing municipal and industrial waste management and circular economy solutions. Welcome to the panel. We next have Professor Amit Kumar. He is the Professor and Canada Research Chair at University of Alberta, a globally recognized authority on energy system assessment and evidence-based climate policy. Welcome, Professor. And then we have Dr. Alok Sharma. He is the Director R&D at Indian Oil. He brings in several decades of experience in the conventional energy and also some of the new emerging energy technologies. So let me take a moment to frame the context of our discussion today. We all know that India generates close to about 1.7 lakh tons of waste on daily basis, which translates to about 60 million tons of solid waste on annual basis. About half of this waste is organic, which eventually ends up in the landfills and open dump sites. These dump sites not only cause public menace, they are also a major source of methane generation, which causes environmental and health hazard. And I mean, just to give you the impact of that, every ton of methane has a GHG potency which is 80 times than that of CO2. Conversion of this waste to energy brings in a near perfect, if I may call it, impact, circular economy impact in terms of its ability to reduce carbon emission, to bring in energy security, and most importantly, the local economic value that it creates for various stakeholders, including farmers. Now, keeping that view, I think in this session, primarily, we will try and explore two important principal questions. One, that how do we scale deployment of waste to energy capacity in the country, and most importantly, not just augment the deployment of the energy, but deploy it responsibly, sustainably, and commercially, which is equally important. And second is to also look at what changes in the policy, technology, business models, and financing of this project is required to enable not just augmentation of capacity, to create an ecosystem which will then enable all of these to happen. With that, let me pause and dive into our conversations, and let me begin with you, Ashish, and let me just ask you a high level question, which is what is the imperative between waste to wealth? Is it environmental, or do you see this emerging as a viable energy option?
The fact that we are sitting here, I'm clearly in the second bucket. It is takes what is something that is really bad for society, which is, and I would first define what is waste to wealth. Yeah, there are two kinds of waste. One waste which you talked about, which is municipal solid waste. The other waste is agro waste, which also is very important to bring into our definition, because that is what in many ways is causing pollution in big parts of India. So if you can solve both of these, and both of these are very good carbon sources. Yeah, and for a country which is energy deficient and importing so much energy, you take something that is really bad, and there is no amount that you can put to how bad it is. Yeah, you're taking people's health away. And even in the case of municipal solid waste, you have leachates and many other things, and you're converting it to something useful. So it is something that is an energy solution but takes something which is environmentally a big negative and converts it to that. Anyone that wants to see can this model work should go visit Indore. Yeah, and Indore's waste to energy plant is a template that this can be done at scale, this can be done profitably, and this can be done in a way that it creates tremendous amount of value. Similarly, when you look at CBG and taking agro waste and converting it into CBG, India now has about 15 to 20 plants that have reached some amount of scale. There are about 50 plants that are in some sort of order of coming to scale. These are close to commercial viability. So as an industry, this is right at the precipice of what it takes to get to the next level. To your questions around what are three things that are needed to make this happen? First, across, whether it's CBG from agro waste or whether it is municipal solid waste, segregation. Source segregation and the ability to collect is easily the single biggest thing to solve for. And Indore has done a great job. There are many other cities in India that are doing this. But this is not just policy, this is on-ground work that has to be done with the municipalities, and to create a system by which homes and commercial buildings and restaurants and everyone segregates waste. Yeah, because if you have everything mixed up, there's no amount of things you can do later on to create economic viability. That's the first thing. Second is to create economic models for converting this waste into energy, which means having guaranteed offtakes for once you have this waste which is segregated into its useful forms. Yeah, the wet waste, simple rules of thumb is wet waste, convert to CNG. Dry waste, if the calorific value is higher, convert to RDF, take it to power. Construction waste, Malba, which is what we call it, compress it, make it into blocks or bricks, give it back to the industry. That is the model, and metals and everything else is very, very easy to recycle as well. And that model you can do. Yeah, and the third thing that you need to do is to get credible developers into the mix. So you have long-term performance-related guarantees that you are giving, which means you're bringing people into the mix who are willing to do this for 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. Technology can improve, but you have reached a level where you have to do your commercial viability on the basis of what technology can deliver today. And if you do these three things, India can have, in my view, in the next 3 years alone, 500 plus CBG plants and more than 100 municipal solid waste plants. Every city in India should have at least one. Bigger cities like Mumbai and Delhi should have 4 to 5 municipal solid waste plants.
Yeah, thank you. I think 2 points that I want to pick up from conversation. One, that you said we need to look waste from a comprehensive standpoint. It leads to an energy pathway, but then there are also uses where you recover, reuse, recycle, and convert those into valuable products. And I think it is an important lesson for India as well. And just picking that thread and moving on to you, Mr. Daudin, Veolia has done this in multiple countries and geographies. I would want you to come into conversation from a global best practices standpoint. What you see other countries have done it, what have done it right, wrong, and what are the key lessons for India then to pick from there?
Yeah, thank you. So I think in this waste to energy, and I would like to add an additional reservoir of energy that is in the same segment, which is also the sludge, the municipal sludge, which is becoming a huge headache in terms of volume and which is a huge reservoir of energy. Why I bring it now is because I think this segregation at the source is a common problem we have when we speak about waste, but as well when we speak about municipal sludge. It's come in a different form, but you need to have a proper infrastructure to manage this resource from the origin up to the gate of the plant. Being proper segregation in the waste, being proper network management so that you get a good quality of sludge. I'm amazed to see that in India, when we look at the potential of generating CNG from the sludge, it's roughly speaking half of what you will find around the rest of the world. So by having a better management of the infrastructure, we would have a better concentrated energy to treat. We also need to look at that and to go to your point, where do we have to go energy versus recycling? This is one brick of the solution. This is not the entire solution. So whatever can be recovered, we should recover, recycle. But what in the end remain as this legacy has to be treated, and conversion to energy is the right thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to you, Professor Amit Kumar. We've discussed some of the challenges, and you've been in your role looking at various various energy systems, and assessing from that standpoint. What do you think are some of the challenges that we have not talked about, and limitations to scaling up such capacity? It's not just about the capacity, but also actually creating a large scale institutional capacity and governance around, particularly on collection, segregation, and then probably converting that into energy and other products.
Thank you, Ravi. I'd like to probably comment a little bit on and follow up on what Ashish said in terms of, we using waste to energy, but I think it's also a bigger problem than it's a health problem too. Because of the situation you see sometimes, burning of those grasses and the pollution that it creates. And that is like at a scale where it affects the economic activities too. So it costs quite a lot. So if you think about that aspect, trying to solve that problem by providing solutions to use that waste, that is that will make this more attractive. One of the things I also want to talk about is in terms of the challenges. Segregation is a challenge, but also the scale at which you build this plant. The fundamentals of any bioenergy application, if you see, typically there is a trade-off between the capital cost of the bioenergy plant and the transportation of these resources. Now, in this case, we transport it to probably a transfer station or just dump it. But the scale plays a key role. And the scale is basically, it gets us to an optimal scale, which is a function of, how much you invest, what is the size you build it, how far you transport, what is the amount of municipal solid waste available. And then these needs to be coupled with a lot of municipal guidelines, a lot of guidelines where what kind of infrastructure is available to use that energy, and then transport. So probably if you produce liquid fuels, yes, is there infrastructure to use that in terms of any of the gases that you produce, where you blend it, how far you have to transport it. So to me, one of the key challenges in terms of building an optimal scale, these plants at an optimal scale, that's one big thing. The other thing I'd also say is that there are some challenges in terms of looking at different technologies for producing this. So, we have biogas production, but we have liquid fuel production from municipal solid waste. The type of preparation of the material, the characteristics of the materials, those are a little bit different. And those are also when you look at, and if you have a particular technology where you use it, that's fine. But if you have multiple technologies and multiple pathways to go, preparing the materials is another big challenge. So, those would be two major challenges, and other have already been identified.
Sure. So, coming to you, Dr. Sharma, let me pick up that last challenge of technology. We have seen since Satat scheme was announced, we have seen that many of the developers have actually tried some of the global technologies that were available. The outcome has been mixed. In some cases, we have done things, technologies have suited to our feedstock, to our requirements, while on other side, there also have been challenges in kind of achieving the desired outcomes from those technologies. And I think the essential cause behind that is the fact that the feedstock on which those technologies were developed essentially varies from the feedstock that we have, which means that R&D then essentially becomes a focus area. We need to continuously innovate and develop technologies that suit our context, our feedstock. I want to bring in you, and aware of the fact that Indian Oil has been working in this area. What do you think are some of the gaps that exist in developing these technologies, and kind of bringing them to the commercial deployment, and how can we bridge those gaps?
Yes. See, before coming to the technological challenges and the point which was raised here regarding the segregation of the waste, so we were the first adopters of sort of like setting up a waste to like natural gas plant. It is already there, 5-ton plant at Faridabad. And just to mention here that there was a MOU with the Municipal Corporation of Faridabad that they are going to supply this 5-ton of organic waste per day. So that, but till date, they are not able to supply more than 1 ton. So that's the bigger issue, I think. So we have to target those issues first. Otherwise, technology-wise, see, biogas plants, these are normal. We are operating now cow dung plants, press mud plants.
Yeah.
The issue is not from the technology side. From the cow dung and these press mud plants, the issue is the take of the manure. So manure is becoming a bigger issue rather than the biogas plants. And regarding the paddy straw processing in the CBG plant, so we developed this technology, but somehow the pre-treatment of this paddy straw that became a bigger challenge than the otherwise. CBG production is a standard process. It takes whatever time it takes to make the gas. It's there, and it's very conventional process. Not a big science in this. So, but the issue is how to treat this feed and how to make it like flow and go to the reactor biofermentation. So that's the major challenge, which slowly we have sorted it out. Most of the companies are facing all this type of problems. Now it is being sorted out, and we are now running the plant at 50% capacity. Slowly we are increasing with the paddy straw also. So I think the technology-wise, the issues mostly have been sorted out now.
Sure, sure. Ashish, let me come to you and just pick up that thread. Essentially, when we say that creating an institutional capacity, and I had an interesting instance 2 months back, had the opportunity to host a Korean delegation. And the expectation was to understand if they have a technology, how their overall municipal waste management system, which is regarded as pretty much a gold standard globally, realize that it is not about the technology and what Dr. Sharma said, it is about the governance and enforcement of municipal practices that they have put around. Any thoughts on that? What do you think? Any ideas that how can we look at strengthening the institutional capacity of our municipalities?
Look, it's, I think, a subject beyond what I would have and can comment on credibly. All I'll say is things are getting better. There are more and more cities that are doing a better and better job of making it happen. And I've shared some examples. Even as you speak today, we talked about Indore, Prayagraj, Lucknow has a project going, Mumbai has a couple going, Ahmedabad is looking at one. So across India now, they are starting to look at this, and there is social pressure from people like me and you who are saying, please do a better job of this, and many local municipalities are acting. I think this is, we both as citizens, but also it's our responsibility in many ways to do a better job of segregating our own waste in terms of our own habit, awareness, etc. can also be better. In terms of R&D and technology, I do feel, and not feel, I do believe, and with fair amount of confidence, that some of the challenges are local and the solution too in many cases will be local. India's waste has got a organic mix which is very particular to India based on the food that we eat and the way we do things. It has got higher organic, higher wet content. It has got seasonal fluctuations. It also has, in some ways, it is less segregated than other places. But given the density of our cities, the transportation issue, etc., is relatively easier in India. All said and done, where I'm going with is lot of good solutions we can bring to bear to solve these problems. Those solutions have to be done out of India, and R&D is, and you can't say why we don't do R&D. You can't blame the government, you can't blame anyone. Indian companies, and I would put Thermax in the mix, we need to stand up and work on some of these problem statements locally, which is what we are looking to do. Yeah, we're looking at significantly increasing our R&D budgets. We're starting to take these problem statements, working with partners upstream and downstream, working with education universities, and starting to create very specific programs that look to solve some of these technology related issues conclusively. Yeah, and we can do that. I think I'm very confident that India can come up with the right answers for its unique problems.
Sure. Before we move on, I just thought an add on to that question is from a consumer standpoint. In some sense, the energy that we produce from waste will eventually replace the conventional energy. What do you think? Any ideas around what can be done to actually bridge that gap
I think we
between?
have done everything we've talked about here,
Yeah.
every portion of the pie, and we've got very detailed economics on how much is the large scale. There are three parts that come into this here. We talked about MSW, we talked about agro waste residue. Third, we talked about, which we haven't talked about, is fallow land which is not used for anything. Can you bring it? A fourth one would be basically wet organic matter, sludge, etc. If you bring all of that into play, by our math, as much as 10% of India's energy needs can be solved by this waste to wealth bucket. But that's a very important 10% because it is in this 10% that you're getting a green carbon atom. Yeah, electricity and most of the other sources won't give you a green carbon atom. Here you're getting a green carbon atom, which you can then drive into green methanol, green kind of plastics and variety of different chains. So the value out here is a lot more, and what it takes away from an environmental problem, if you add that, it is one of the best things you can work on.
Thank you. Mr. Daudin, just staying on that point of enhancing the capacity of municipalities, I mean, you work with some of the city management institutions across the world. Any specific best practices that you have come across in terms of, how to manage the waste, and most importantly, some of the collaborative business models with municipalities that you would think could be a good lesson for India?
Yeah. I think the important point is to see that there is a consciousness now on the important on the topic. Wherever you go across India, Mike, this one is wherever you go across and meet city officials, it's a topic that is on the top of their mind. So I think that's the first point, because we start to think about it. To be successful, I think the waste management, this volume management, need to be integrated at the very early planning stage of any city development.
Okay.
It needs to be seen now as a basic infrastructure that will enable a sustainable development. It's also an opportunity to share wealth. Speaking about agri-waste, today what we see, the in-place burning, that we can help to address by collecting this waste and transforming it as a source of energy, can also give an opportunity to give back some additional value to the farmer. So you start to create a virtuous ecosystem around our municipalities, being the major one which has the means, but also the smaller localities in India.
Professor Kumar, I just want to again bring you back to some of the technological pathways. One of the objective of managing waste is also to avoid CO2 generation, I mean, which typically happens through the methane pathway. What is your views on what are the best pathways to actually ensure CO2 removal?
So when you talk about CO2 removal, so the way I frame it is the carbon dioxide removal technologies. So here we're talking about, if you think about carbon dioxide removal technologies, there are three categories of that, broad categories. The first one is your direct air capture. Second one is BECCS, where this falls in municipal solid waste or waste to energy. And BECCS talks about bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. Bioenergy is anyway carbon neutral. We know that over life cycle. And the moment you add carbon capture and storage to it, so basically you have negative carbon. So you are sequestering more than what you're emitting. So over the life cycle, this is net negative CO2. So much better than, if you're just using bioenergy. If you think about BECCS, I think among all the CDR technologies, BECCS is much more mature and doable. Because if you decouple this bioenergy, so we talked about solutions, we talked about technologies where we produce gas, we produce energy, we produce fuels. But all of these, if we think about that, the CO2 emitted during the process, and then if we add CCS, and CCS is on a commercial scale, carbon capture and storage, larger scale, carbon capture and storage is happening. In fact, we see in Canada, we do have infrastructure even in place, large pipelines, which is carrying CO2, operating, putting CO2 underground. So the two pieces in terms of the bioenergy production as well as carbon capture and storage, those are already there and mature. So, in terms of carbon dioxide removal, I think BECCS is much more mature. And this gives an added advantage to bioenergy pathways, and especially waste to energy pathways.
Yeah. Dr. Sharma, let me come back to you. And Ashish also kind of talked about it, that driving R&D in some sense becomes the responsibility of the industry. Government, of course, comes in and supports that process. But share your perspective on R&D, what you think can be done by the industry, by the government or other stakeholders to kind of drive this entire focus on R&D when it comes to the clean technologies.
See, as far as CBG technology is concerned, there is not much to develop now. Mostly things are developed. But the things which were raised, like CO2 capture and other things, so there, like we are trying to do some interventions, like there's a standard process where we use amines to capture CO2. But what we are doing, that we are trying to have some enzymatic intervention so that the capture, the temperature requirement of the capture comes down. So that's the technical intervention which we are doing. We are also doing this in direct air capture, like CO2 capture from the atmosphere. So we are doing these type of interventions. Parallelly, what we are trying to, we have recently started one project is on the pyrolysis oil. If we can produce pyrolysis oil and then process in the refinery, so that can be one pathway for like using this waste and biomass and other things. And apart from this, one of the new things which we have taken up is on the plasma gasification. So there are some examples where unsegregated waste can be treated by plasma gasifications. So that though it is costly, but we are trying to see that if we can develop these plasma torches in-house, like in India itself, those things can also shape up these requirements of treating this mixed sort of waste. So that is also there on our radar.
Sure.
May I just say one comment, and sir, just a small potential area of disagreement. I feel even in CBG, there are a lot of areas which are still intensive from an R&D perspective. And if I just name a few, the whole digestate, what do you do with the digestate? Can you upgrade it to something that is useful and significant? Can you bring technologies like HDL to get something good out of it? Can you put from the liquid portion even look to drive biohydrogen, etc.? Can you bring some sort of plasma gasification or some other capabilities that got referenced? So there are a lot of pathways on what you can do with the digestate. In the incoming feed perspective, how do you cut the feed in a way that it's easily digestible? We've been now working our plants for 3 years. That cutting process is still and not very as good as we would want it. And there's no global technology that exists to make that happen. The whole carbon capture and what do you do with that carbon and bringing it out back into some sort of useful supply, either by upgradation to green methanol or something. There are numerous areas in which in a bio-CNG plant of what you are taking of the carbon that is available and bringing it back into, from a CNG perspective, is 1/3 or less of the original carbon that you get. There's 60+% which is still available for doing more and more interesting things with it. So I think lot still requires to be done and you yourself mentioned a few ideas. I don't think the technology roadmap is complete on this.
See, just to add here that what he said about the availability of the residue, like so I was also told that this residue, what is remaining, is making it uneconomical. The CBG plant, especially from the cow dung and paddy straw. So, but what we are trying to do that the Praj Industries, they are already come out with some like blending this with the bitumen. So those sort of things are also going on, and I think this digestion and other things can also be thought of, like we can do some gasification of this also. So those things are also being tried. So he's correct that there are still lot to be taken out from these like digested and other things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also to the fact that I think we also need stronger environmental compliances. And I work in this space with developers from very large established organizations to small and medium scale enterprises. My realization and observation is that large organizations do have very robust operating procedures, standards that they comply to, but in some areas we have seen some, it's not the intent issue, it is in some sense the capability and capacity issue, so which also needs to be looked at. We have few minutes left, so maybe last concluding comments from all the panelists. Maybe we go with you, Professor Kumar, first.
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing is in terms of, digestate, we are talking about using thermal processes to convert it. There are pathways where also the pathways which are looking at in terms of producing it and using it as an animal feed, which gives much better return too. So you don't have to go all the way to convert it into fuels. The other thing I would say in terms of carbon, which was mentioned in terms of the CO2, you can take that carbon and produce fuels, you can produce composites, you can produce polymers. One of the things is important that, if you compare it and if you convert it to fuels, at the end of the day, you are again burning it and putting it out in the atmosphere. So, if you're utilizing carbon, I am a strong believer that you probably should permanently sequester that carbon. And so produce products where you can permanently sequester that, probably one of the composites or materials, or put it underground.
So just one question on that. How is the economic works for that? Because probably for a scale of a waste plant, which may not be a very large volume and large CO2 generation, does the economic works with the kind of technologies we have?
Yeah, so as I said, then it again goes back to the very fundamentals in terms of, what is the scale that you are producing? Now, you won't do CO2 conversion on a smaller scale. Probably you will bring the CO2 together and then convert it on a larger scale, which will be basically much more economical. So that's how you're going to do. Still, I would still say that the technology is being developed. It's not available in conversion on a commercial scale, large commercial scale, where you produce polymers and composites. In terms of just the comment, I would say that, the critical thing here for waste is important to look at, couple not only think it as an energy source, but also think about, and especially municipal solid waste, that reducing the environmental problems. So you are coupling both of these issues together, which makes it much more sense and makes it much more beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Daudin, your concluding comments?
Two points on the technology side and what we do to use this remaining carbon, and in particular when we come to sludge. There is a huge energy utilization to produce fertilizer, and we have fertilizer deficit.
Yeah.
Using that carbon to enrich and enhance the soil can be an option. It has to be done, but we have successful example worldwide where this is done in a very controlled manner. The second point, I want to come back on your comment on compliance. I think compliance on all the emissions will be critical, because one thing that we need to fight against is this not in my backyard syndrome, social acceptability of those solutions. And to be able to convince ourselves as a citizen and our communities that this is a good solution, we have to be able to guarantee that we are not going to create additional problem by not strictly following the SOPs and the compliance and the procedure.
Correct. Right. Dr. Sharma first.
See, the availability of organic waste in the country is huge, and that can be a good source of energy. That's what I want to say. And there are examples, like he said, that Pune and Indore, Hyderabad. There are examples, and we have to replicate those things for the country.
Sure. Ashish, your comments.
Thank you. Look, India will be one of the biggest energy growth countries of the world. If we continue to do what we did in the past, we'll only make everything around us much worse. We are short of clean water, clean air, and we have to look at different pathways for growth. Waste to energy is one of the best pathways that is available. It's part of a few set of solutions that will be part of the new energy mix, but of those set of solutions, a very critical and an important one.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, I think, for the insights. My closing comments, it's an immense opportunity. We need to get it right, and happy to see that last few years, we've kind of tried to solve almost 70% of the problems, but going forward, it's a huge opportunity from environmental standpoint. For your insights. Thank you for the audience for having a patient listening.